Tinnitus is one of the most common service-connected disabilities, so it's no surprise that one of our most popular topics and videos from 2020 was VA disability benefits secondary to tinnitus. We thought we'd update that video and provide additional information on the topic. Dallas, can you start us off and walk us through what tinnitus is?
Yes. So tinnitus refers to a perception of a noise or a ringing in the ears. This is commonly a symptom of another underlying condition like hearing loss, an ear injury, or a circulatory system disorder. You can have some other symptoms like ringing or buzzing, roaring, clicking, hissing, or humming. So it's pretty broad, like what people could be hearing in their ears. And it's not a life-threatening condition, but it can cause some significant impairment in your functional abilities.
Yeah, absolutely. And there are, frankly, numerous causes. Some of those, though, you can probably imagine are relatively prevalent and frequent in service. And so things like gunfire, machinery, armored vehicles, aircraft, head trauma, combat environments, all these sorts, and that's just a non-exhaustive list, of course. All these things frequently happen and occur in service. It's hard to really escape them when you're in service. Right. And for many veterans, that results in a diagnosis of tinnitus. TBI is another big one. Like we said, head trauma. This can cause a veteran to develop the ringing in their ear, the tinnitus. Mm-hmm. There are other things, other factors, of course, like age-related hearing loss, earwax even, changes to the middle ear bones. There are various factors, but what I've seen primarily is, combat service-related factors such as, noise exposure linked to artillery fire, gunfire, just heavy machinery, things that occur day to day for veterans that are in service and that they can't really avoid.
Yeah. So tinnitus is obviously pretty common in our service members and veterans. So how is it rated would be our next question. Yep. The governing regulation for tinnitus ratings is 38 CFR section 4.87. And tinnitus does currently have its own diagnostic code, 6260. And when awarding tinnitus, it doesn't matter if it's in one ear or both ears. VA only assigns a 10% rating. So if you had just one ear, 10. Both ears, 10. But in some rare cases, and very rare, I must say, VA might give a higher rating that's extra schedular. So I want to note, though, that VA has proposed to change the rating system to eliminate standalone tinnitus ratings. It would instead be a symptom of another condition. So this can change how secondary conditions are claimed, but they should still be compensated.
And to be clear, this is just a proposal as of right
absolutely,
now, right?
Yeah.
Although it does look like it could be finalized on the horizon. We don't know exactly when that might be, but it's something to keep in mind that this is out there. Veterans who have claims already filed or that are pending on appeal wouldn't be impacted by any change to the regulation.
Exactly. And CCK is obviously monitoring this very closely, and we'll have some information should there be any changes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So as you said, tinnitus is capped at a 10% rating, but there are other ways that veterans can see an increase in their overall compensation disability picture that result from disabilities linked to tinnitus. So what are we talking about here? We're talking about secondary service connection. The concept essentially of secondary service connection is that if a veteran's service-connected disability causes or aggravates another condition, then that secondary condition can be linked to service and thus service-connected by virtue of it being caused or aggravated by tinnitus. And so, a common example that I've seen is that a veteran is service-connected for tinnitus, and as a result, they develop depression. You can imagine the constant ringing in your ear over a prolonged period could potentially lead to anxiety or depression, number of other different conditions. But if the veteran can provide medical evidence, which is critical to show that the veteran's secondary condition, in this case, anxiety or depression, is caused or aggravated by service-connected tinnitus, then the secondary condition can be service-connected, and a separate rating will be awarded for that secondary condition. And so that can increase the veteran's overall disability picture by adding additional conditions that are independently rated, even if tinnitus is by itself capped at 10%.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah. And another example could be migraine headaches. This is a really common one due to tinnitus as well. And migraines they're characterized by intense pain, nausea, vomiting, and sensitivity to light and sound. Some research shows that up to 27% of people with tinnitus are also experiencing migraines. So another really common thing, and this is another way to really bump up a rating if you were service-connected for just tinnitus at 10, because a migraine condition can be rated up to 50%. So it can be pretty huge.
Now, another secondary condition that we see less frequently but does appear from time to time is something called somatic symptom disorder. This involves excessive focus on a physical symptom, and it causes oftentimes distress or impairment. This is a symptom that is often secondarily linked to tinnitus due to the kind of constant ringing nature of tinnitus in one's ear or both ears. And so this disorder is something that is, if diagnosed and granted, awarded separately. A separate rating is awarded for it. And therefore, as we were talking about a second ago, allows for an alternative path for veterans to be further compensated and really have the full scope of their disability picture accounted for due to service-connected tinnitus. Additionally, there are many studies that show that sleep disorders are conditions that are oftentimes linked to veterans who have underlying diagnosis of tinnitus. And so this can include sleep apnea, it can include insomnia. Various different types of sleep disorders can be linked to tinnitus. And if that is the case for you, consider filing a separate claim for service connection of those conditions linked secondarily to tinnitus. And again, as we've been saying all along here, if granted, those sleep disorders would be rated separately from tinnitus and allow for additional compensation.
Mm-hmm. And this isn't an exhaustive list. This is just some common examples that we see day to day in our practice.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so when we're filing for secondary service connection, there's some things that you need to have before you go ahead and file. So number one, of course, would be a diagnosis of the secondary condition. Sometimes, like Mike talked about, tinnitus can cause some anxiety and depression, but that alone may not be enough. You would need to have a clinical diagnosis of a mental health disorder in that case. And that's going to also require, as would any other claims, medical evidence that at least alludes to or shows a link to the claimed condition and your service-connected tinnitus, as we're talking about now. And some options that we can submit otherwise are treatment records, physician letters. Maybe your private physician can give a nexus opinion. Also, veterans can submit lay statements talking about their own experience with their symptoms. But also what could be helpful is any medical literature that shows some connection. We talked about a few numbers today that we've seen in the medical literature. So anything like that could be supportive for a claim and enough to get VA to trigger their duty to assist and get an exam.
Absolutely. Those are all great practical tips. One other thing to consider is a veteran's MOS or military occupational specialty really matters in these cases because VA has in its manual a list of different MOSs and it categorizes those by level of noise exposure. And so depending on what a veteran's MOS is, VA will list and categorize the level it deems to have, for a normal veteran or average veteran, to have been exposed to noise in that circumstance.
Right. And if I could add, even if it's low exposure, it's still, you're going to have the hazardous noise exposure conceded, even if it's low,
exactly.
a low level. Yeah.
So that's a great starting place for a lot of veterans who don't know where to look. Again, it's in VA's own adjudication manual, and it's a piece of evidence that sometimes VA overlooks and should be pointed out in a legal argument or a legal brief to show that this veteran was very likely exposed to high levels or even low levels of noise exposure. And as a result of that in-service noise, tinnitus likely developed. So good practical tips. We have plenty more information on the topic at our website, cck-law.com. And please don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel and leave a comment below if you'd like us to discuss any future topics in another episode.